The ideas expressed in the Akron Roundtable Signature Series are those of the speakers, not of the Akron Roundtable, its partners, or sponsors.
Good afternoon. I'm Barry Dunaway. I'm the president of the board of the Akron Roundtable, and we are really thrilled that you're here with us this afternoon. Akron Roundtable has been hosting its signature events here in beautiful downtown Akron for nearly 50 years. The Akron Roundtable proudly promotes community dialogue and networking and remains committed to our mission to bring the world to Akron. We invite individuals with diverse backgrounds and life experiences to speak on relevant topics to inform and educate our community, consider other perspectives, and encourage us to take action. In 2026, Akron Roundtable will celebrate its 50th anniversary, and we have a really special year planned. I'd like to invite Natalie Schulte to the podium, Akron Roundtable board member, to share some brief comments about our 2026 season. Natalie?
Hi everyone, I'm Natalie Schulte. I'm an attorney at Retzel and Andres. As one of the youngest members of the Akron Roundtable board, I can tell you how incredible it is to be part of an organization that's been shaping conversations in our community for 50 years. I wasn't even born when Roundtable started, but I'm here today because its mission still matters, maybe more than ever. For decades, Akron Roundtable has brought world-class speakers right here to our city. People who challenge us, inspire us, and spark ideas we carry back into our work, our classrooms, and our neighborhoods. And now, as we celebrate our 50th anniversary season, we're not just looking back at that legacy, we're building the future. We are very excited to welcome some fabulous speakers next year, including ESPN analyst Brian Windhurst, Olympic medalist Butch Reynolds, artist Leandra Drum, and costume designer Paul Tazwell. You might know him from Wicked. That being said, I want to encourage you to grab a subscription for this milestone upcoming season. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss out on a single program, and it's also a way to show you believe in the next generation of leadership and dialogue in Akron. When you subscribe, you're helping us keep this tradition alive and relevant for the next 50 years. There's information on your tables with a QR code that takes you right to our website where you can learn more about how to become a subscriber. You can also go to akronroundtable.org/reservations to learn more, or you can also just grab one of us board members and we'll help walk you through it. So let's celebrate together. Let's honor the past, but also invest in the future. Secure your subscription today and be part of this amazing, one-of-a-kind season that's coming up. I promise you'll walk away from every roundtable with new ideas, new connections, and new energy to make a huge difference. 50 years is a huge milestone worth celebrating, but trust me, the best is still yet to come.
Great. Thanks, Natalie. All of those speakers that Natalie mentioned have ties to Akron. They've gone on to national or international acclaim, so we're tapping into all of those Akronites to celebrate 2026. Today's guest speaker is Brett Crozier, CEO, LTA Research. The conversation with Brett will be moderated by Steve Millard, who's the president and CEO of the Greater Akron Chamber. And this is the last of our four-part Celebrate Akron series in recognition of Akron's bicentennial. Thank you to Huntington Bank and the Billow Funeral Home for sponsoring this series. I'd like to acknowledge our title sponsor, State and Federal Communications, and my family is today's program sponsor in honor of our grandfather, Steve Dudra, who worked at Goodyear Aircraft Company during World War II. For you Akron history buffs in the room, Goodyear Zeppelin Corporation, which was part of a joint project with Luftschiffe Zeppelin, a German company, became Goodyear Aircraft Company in 1939 as a result of strained relationships between the US and Germany prior to World War II. And LTA currently operates out of the former Goodyear Air Dock here in Akron. Brett has graciously agreed to take questions from the audience following his conversation with Steve. Videria Nicholson-Sweevil, another Akron Roundtable board member, will moderate the Q&A. To submit a question, you can refer to the brochures that are on your table. There's a QR code there that you can use your phone to access. The QR codes will be projected on our screens. Or if you don't have a mobile device with you, there are note cards on the table. You can jot your question down, and one of our staff members will come around and collect that. Feel free to submit a question at any time during the presentation if something that Brett mentions kind of triggers a question that you would like to ask during the Q&A. In consideration of our speakers, if I could ask you to turn your mobile devices off so that we have a nice quiet room for Brett's conversation. And at this time, I'll ask Steve Millard to come forward and introduce our speaker and begin our program. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Barry. And thanks to everybody who's taken the time to come out today to hear, I think, what's going to be an amazing story from Brett. You know, the Greater Akron Chamber is proud to be a founder of the Akron Roundtable, helping to connect ideas, innovation, and leadership with the heart of our community. It's especially exciting to host today's program, a city with a proud legacy of innovation and resilience, and of course, a special place in aviation history. Akron built the legendary USS Akron and USS Macon right inside the iconic air dock. That same spirit of ingenuity that once defined our skylines being reimagined for a new era of sustainable flight. So our speaker today is leading that charge. Brett Crozier is the CEO of LTA Research, where he and his team are developing the next generation of airships designed to deliver humanitarian aid and reduce the carbon footprint of aviation. Brett brings with him more than 30 years of leadership experience as a decorated U.S. Navy veteran. A graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, he went on to command at the highest operational levels, from a combat FA-18 strike fighter squadron to the USS Blue Ridge, and later the USS Theodore Roosevelt, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. I mean, how many aircraft carrier commanders are you going to hear from, right? Following his distinguished military career, Brett transitioned into the private sector, where he continued to serve with purpose, first supporting veteran homelessness initiatives, and now leading innovation at LTA Research. Today, he'll share how modern technology, from advanced materials and fly-by-wire controls, is transforming a historic mode of flight into a sustainable solution for the 21st century. Please join me in welcoming Brett Crozier, CEO of LTA Research.
Hi. So when you stand inside the Akron Air Dock for the first time, it takes your breath away. The space feels almost alive with echoes of the past and dreams of the future. Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin once said, "In the air, as on the earth, there is room for all forms of locomotion." He recognized that true advancement in aerospace comes not from a single solution, but from a range of platforms optimized for different missions. The pioneer of rigid airships didn't see them as replacing ships or trains or the emerging airplane. He saw them as a distinct capability designed to operate where others could not. That vision of a complete aviation ecosystem where each technology serves its optimal purpose is more relevant today than ever. We have made significant, magnificent jets that cross oceans in hours, helicopters that can pluck someone from a mountain peak, and cargo planes that can keep global supply chains moving. But we're still missing something. We're missing the aircraft that can float for days without burning tons of fuel, that can open windows to the wind, and carry what the world needs where runways don't exist. Here in Akron, in the very hangar where America's great rigid airships were born, we're preparing to fill that gap. Not by trying to recreate the past, but by applying modern material science, advanced computing, thrust vectoring, and sustainable propulsion to the timeless principle of buoyancy. We're returning to aviation what it lost nearly a century ago, and proving that what seemed like an ending was actually just an intermission. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm deeply grateful to be here in Akron today, speaking to the leaders who shaped the remarkable future of the city. Thank you to the Akron Roundtable for the invitation, and to Steve for your kind remarks. And thank you all for welcoming LTA Research into your community with such open arms and genuine enthusiasm. And I look forward to the questions after and meeting many of you after the event today. But standing here in the city that built the magnificent USS Akron and USS Macon, that has housed the Goodyear fleet for generations, that earned the title Airship Capital of the World, it's both humbling and motivating. This city didn't just manufacture airships, it pioneered an entire industry, developed the expertise, created the infrastructure, and cultivated the skilled workforce that made lighter than air aviation possible. When I walk through the Akron Air Dock, a magnificent structure that has stood for nearly a century, I'm reminded that Akron has always been a city that thinks big, that takes on challenges others consider impossible. The same ambition that built the largest building in the world without interior supports, that is the ambition that drew us, LTA, to Akron. But we're not just here to honor that legacy. We're here to write its next chapter. We're here to prove that Akron's greatest contribution to aviation isn't in the past. It's happening right now as we speak, in the work we're doing together to revolutionize flight itself. LTA research actually began right in the city, in the basement of the archives of the University of Akron. In 2014, our founder spent weeks in those archives studying everything about airships. Technical manuals, flight logs, engineering studies. What he discovered was that the end of the original airship era was about timing. The materials weren't ready. The control systems weren't sophisticated enough. In 2025, everything has changed. Carbon fiber composites can provide strength-to-weight ratios the engineers of the 1930s could only dream of. Computer modeling can simulate and solve aerodynamic challenges in hours. Electric motors and battery technology have finally reached aviation-grade reliability. Our founding vision was simple. What if we could revolutionize aviation to be more efficient, sustainable, and adaptable than anything flying today? The answer led us back to the rigid airship. Why airships? Well, because physics don't lie. Buoyancy is free lift. While helicopters burn tremendous fuel just to hover, and while airplanes must maintain forward speed for lift, airships float. In modern carbon fiber, fly-by-wire controls, and electric propulsion, and suddenly you're not looking backward, you're looking at the future of aviation. At LTA, we believe there's inherent value in pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Real innovation creates its own demand by showing the world what it's been missing, and we see clear potential applications. Humanitarian aid in remote areas, climate monitoring from stable platforms, and unique travel experiences that connect people to the world below them. We didn't come to Akron just for the history. We came because Akron understands what it takes to do something like this that's ambitious. This city has a century of manufacturing experience, a workforce that knows how to build things that fly, and the institutional memory of what it takes to make the impossible possible. In the 1930s, Akron was Silicon Valley, Detroit, and Houston rolled into one for lighter-than-air aviation. The USS Akron and USS Macon, constructed here, were the most sophisticated aircraft of their era. Flying aircraft carriers that could launch and recover fighter planes in midair. The Akron Air Dock, at 1,175 feet and 211 feet tall, was built without interior supports. Revolutionary engineering that created a cathedral of innovation. The building is so large that 7 football games can be played simultaneously inside, and so long that 2 Washington monuments could be placed end to end inside the hangar. But we're also tapping into Akron's deep manufacturing heritage. The city has been at the forefront of American manufacturing for over a century. The precision required to design a tire is the same precision required to design an airship. The quality control culture, the understanding that lives depend on getting it right, this is embedded in Akron's DNA. When our Pathfinder 1 rises to the sky, it carries with it not just helium and technology, but the accumulated knowledge, skill, and ambition of this remarkable city. Every flight is a testament to what Akron was, what it is, and what it'll continue to be. A city that makes the impossible fly. In 2017, LTA's founder assembled a small group of University of Akron interns to form an R&D arm of the company. They set up shop in what was known at the time as the Firehouse, a 1-story brick structure on the southern end of the Air Dock campus. The building, I think, has been removed, but you can still find bricks around our office as memorabilia. But the team refined concepts and built multiple subscale prototypes to validate systems before Pathfinder 1 construction began. The team there also began forming connections with local community leaders. A great many visitors came through the doors of the firehouse, and I imagine most left feeling inspired by the potential of a long-neglected aircraft. These relationships also played other unexpectedly important roles. In July of 2018, the team needed a private place free of obstructions to flight test one of those early prototypes. After a few phone calls, they found themselves driving the streets of Akron in the middle of the night, towing a small airship down the middle of Exchange to the UA football field, led by a police escort. So I'd like to imagine the call that they got there at the police desk when they were asked to do that. But that experience taught us that innovation doesn't just happen in isolation. It requires community support, understanding, and sometimes a bit of patience with the unusual. The Akron police who provided that escort weren't just doing their jobs. They were participating in history, helping us prove that these concepts could work in the real world, not just in computer simulation. Today, we have talented teams across California, Ohio, and Nevada. Over a dozen are University of Akron graduates, including 3 original interns. One of which told me, working on Pathfinder 1 doesn't feel like building something new. It feels like completing something that was started long before I was born. So I spent 30 years in the Navy as a naval aviator. My shout out to the folks in the back there wearing the uniform. Thanks for your service. I flew helicopters and fighters and eventually commanded a couple of ships, including an aircraft carrier. And you might wonder what aircraft carriers and airships have in common. Both are about projecting capability through the air. Both require orchestrating complex operations where hundreds must work in perfect synchronization. Both demand absolute attention to safety. When I first learned of LTA, I was skeptical at first. But the more I learned, the more I realized that this wasn't about nostalgia. This was about solving real problems with innovative engineering. What drew me was the opportunity to push the boundaries of what's possible. My philosophy is simple. Hire brilliant people, give them clear objectives and resources, then just get out of their way. Create a culture where safety is paramount, questions are encouraged, and failure is seen as learning. Comparing the rigid airships of the 1930s to what we're building today is like comparing a Model T to a Tesla. Pathfinder 1's mainframe uses aerospace-grade carbon fiber, over 100 times stronger than was available back in the 30s. Our geodesic framework distributes loads more efficiently than anything previously imagined, and our fly-by-wire system processes thousands of inputs per second, making micro adjustments no human could manage. One of our patent breakthroughs came from an unexpected source when University of Akron co-op student Kyle Verney joined LTA late in 2020 to help solve the challenge of monitoring helium cells inside the airship. Early tests explored several sensing methods before Kyle's LiDAR-based approach proved most effective, using the same technology that helps self-driving cars generate real-time 3D maps of each of our cells' volume and the position in the airship. It can detect changes less than an inch in size, giving us unprecedented ability to monitor and maintain optimal performance across the envelope. This breakthrough didn't come from Silicon Valley. It came from a University of Akron student with a curiosity and a fresh perspective. Fresh eyes, unconstrained by conventional thinking, often see solutions that experience might overlook. And safety drives everything we do. In historical photographs depicting the construction of the Akron and the Macon and other historical airships, you'll see the workers perched on these 200-foot ladders, multiple stories high, no safety equipment, and just raw courage and steady nerves. We knew that if we wanted to produce airships safely and efficiently, we needed a better system. So enter another of LTA's patented innovations dubbed the roller coaster. This system involves a cradle that rotates the entire framework of the airship as it's assembled. So not only does it allow for faster construction, but allows assembly from workers to remain safely on the ground or on large, sturdy platforms. Modern safety systems, redundancies, and manufacturing breakthroughs mean we're meeting modern aviation standards. And because this is a new technology, in some cases it means we're working closely with the FAA to develop those standards. Every component has backups. Every system has multiple ways to fail safely. And today we're making history with Pathfinder 1, the largest flying aircraft in the world. 400 feet long, larger than a 747. It's the first rigid airship to fly in nearly 90 years. Since our first flight test this last May, Our flight test team has been methodically expanding the envelope, from simple hovers to forward flight to turns to climbs and descents. And on Tuesday, October 28th, and some of the pictures you see there, we successfully flew Pathfinder 1 up to San Francisco and over the Golden Gate Bridge for the first time. It was a moment the team had been working toward for years, resulting in some iconic photos. But at the same time, it was one step in a long flight test campaign. Each flight teaches us something new, and every insight feeds directly back into our design and operations. And we flew it again on Tuesday just because the weather was good and the airship flies that well. And though these flights happen in California, Akron fingerprints are still all over them. From the engineers who designed the framework to the specialists who helped perfect the systems now soaring overhead, Akron employees make up all the facets of our engineering team as well as the operations and other support functions. Indeed, the latest subscale model, which we use to test software updates before they're installed on Pathfinder 1, conducts those test flights each week inside the Akron Air Dock. The expertise here, the design support, institutional knowledge, it's all contributing to our success in ways both obvious and sometimes subtle. Another example is that of Tyler Hayner, a lead mechanic based right here in Akron. Tyler was responsible for the assembly and testing of the swivel levers that command the positioning of our thrust vectoring motors, as well as the throttle lever inside the airship. So every image you see of Pathfinder soaring over San Francisco like that one, quietly making history, it is due in part to the employees on the ground here in Akron supporting us. In each of these flights, we're gathering unprecedented data, learning how these vehicles actually behave. But mostly, in most cases, it performs much better than even expected. More stable, more efficient, and more responsive. But beyond the aircraft, we're building an entirely new generation of aviation professionals. Our team members aren't just operating Pathfinder 1, they're pioneering an entire industry. So standing here in Akron, we're not just honoring the past, we're igniting the future. And Pathfinder 1, that you see here, is just the beginning. We're proving that the rigid airship story didn't end in 1937. It just took a pause that allowed technology to catch up to the vision. To the leaders here today, you're not just witnesses, you're participants. Your support, your skilled workers, your engineers, your manufacturers, your students, they're all part of the story. Together, we're reinventing what aviation can be. More efficient, more sustainable, more adaptable. And Akron isn't just remembering its airship legacy, it's just building the next chapter. Thank you very much.
Brett, thank you. Thanks for being here today. Also, thanks for the comments about our community, the role it plays, and sort of the way you're thinking about this. When I first met you, when you guys came to Akron a few years ago, I first met the founder of this company. I didn't get it. Like, I didn't understand exactly what you were doing. I knew you were using this iconic place called the Air Dock, and stuff was going on inside there. We weren't sure exactly what was happening there. But talk about why the world needs this product now. I mean, Goodyear's had the blimps around for a long time, and they're iconic. Yeah. What is it that we need from what you're creating that doesn't exist today?
Sure. I'll start just kind of to level it so people understand maybe the difference. You know, we talk about airships, which is really anything that gets its lift from a gas like helium. Mm-hmm. That includes the semi-rigid, like Goodyear, that you see flying quite a bit. And the Zeppelin NT design is a semi-rigid, whereas what we're flying, what we've designed and built is Pathfinder 1, which is a rigid airship, which means that the structure you see is rigid. It's carbon fiber tubes with a covering. The helium is inside and different various helium cells. So when Goodyear deflates the helium, the Goodyear blimps obviously look deflated on the ground, whereas you won't notice that inside a larger rigid structure. And what that gives you then is the ability to build them bigger and do more with them. If you go back to the Macon and the Akron, those airships were 750 feet long. Mm-hmm. They would carry 75 people. They had a hangar inside for the airplanes. They're massive inside. So we've decided to go on the path towards rigid airships because it provides so much more functionality for various kind of missions we talked about. And let's talk about humanitarian as an example, which is one that comes up quite a bit. Airships are uniquely designed for that, particularly rigid airships. We don't need runways. You know, we can stay airborne not just for days, but oftentimes weeks. It's an incredibly stable platform. It can operate low over the ground. And so it creates a unique platform for things like a floating hospital providing medical support to folks on the ground. And again, we can go over places like you mentioned where there's been a disaster or some kind of humanitarian disaster where we want to be present to provide medical care, supplies, or just comms relay. And to me, it's an inspiring mission to design to and be part of in a way that we know there's a need for it that exists even to this day. So that obviously is the first thing that comes to mind. It's one I think that inspires us all as we're kind of building, designing, and flight testing. And it's unique to larger rigid airships like Pathfinder 1, which is our proof of concept. And then in addition, there's travel opportunities. Flying an airship, you can fly at low altitude. It's quiet. You can open the windows. It's an incredibly unique experience where you can see a day where there's also things like potential travel opportunities over wildlife or national parks. And then, of course, there's also cargo as a potential where, unlike most cargo transported in aviation right now, you're limited to the dimensions of a 777 or an airplane. The cargo hold, the cargo capabilities of an airship are much wider, much longer, and so it allows you to take things that are potentially bigger and can be transported in ways that otherwise you couldn't by aviation. So we're excited about all those, and again, humanitarian's the one that, again, the platform is adaptable, sustainable, and incredibly efficient and burns very little gas in a way that I think will open up airships to the future of aviation.
We're also focused on efficiency. The idea of traveling in an airship on a trip, it feels more, maybe a lot like a cruise or a train trip, if you will, but I could imagine dropping down into the Grand Canyon right there. That'd be pretty cool. So you talk about cargo. I mean, give us a sense of the scale and the size of these ships. You used 400 feet as a number. Can you fill the thing with cargo and equipment and things like that, or is it relatively limited because of the lift and all those kinds of things?
Sure. So to be clear, that what you're seeing in the pictures there is Pathfinder 1.
Okay.
It's a proof of concept.
Okay.
Meaning we're validating the structure, we're validating the LiDAR technology we talked about. It's hybrid electric, which means we have batteries for the motors and the thrust vectoring. So we're not, I won't speak to the future design, I think, because that's really what we're focused on right now is the flight testing of our proof of concept. But every time we fly, we're obviously learning lessons about what the larger airships might look like in terms of size.
Got it. So one of the things that you talked about was your history as a Navy pilot and your history in the military, commanding different kinds of groups. When you think about flying this airship, as a pilot, somebody who's flown different kinds of things, what's the experience like when you're in the airship, in the air?
Amazing. Let me start by saying my last flight in the Navy was in a Super Hornet F-18 fighter. I flew over the Golden Gate Bridge, over Alcatraz, and then with my wingman, and we left and went back to the base. Fast, low, wearing a bunch of gear, helmet, mostly terrified I was going to get in trouble or I was going to hit something. And so I was glad when we were out and appreciated it. Now we've flown the airship. And what's unique in that most ways of aviation you think about, it's about getting from point A to point B and how quickly you can do it, how efficiently. Airships open up this experience between point A and point B, whereas now, unlike being at 350 knots in a fighter over the Bay Area, you can be in an airship moving slower, much quieter, at a lower altitude. And so the few times I've flown as a crew member in Pathfinder 1, it's just absolutely remarkable. It's smooth, it's stable. You can open the windows, you can smell the salt spray from the ocean below you. You can walk around and take selfies, and it's an incredible experience. I think that you will all be excited to experience someday, and I feel lucky. And I just think about the comparison. My last flight in the Navy was only a couple years ago to now this, and really understand what a unique opportunity is and what a unique experience that I've been lucky, and I think it's what inspires me about what we're doing.
Sounds pretty interesting. As you think about, you talk about innovation as part of the important piece of what you're trying to do, and you selected Akron to be a place where you want to have operations and you want to have certain kinds of activities here. Talk about what this region brings for you that is unique and different than maybe what you're getting in California or other places. Give us a sense of that.
Sure. I hadn't obviously spent much time in Akron up until the last year, but continue to be amazed at the connections we have with the community, and particularly in the technical side. There's obviously a long history with polymers and the engineering science that goes behind that, but the relationships we had with the university and the students have been part of it, and just this technical understanding at the much higher level in aviation is really something we've benefited from. And again, you think about aviation enterprises, in many cases those are done in places like Edwards Air Force Base or traditionally around Los Angeles, but the aviation background here and the history
and this polymer kind of science that is very translatable to what we're doing provides an incredible opportunity for us as a company as we look to down the road to manufacturing. So that's something certainly that stood out right away, and I look at the number of employees, over almost 24 that come from this area with engineering backgrounds, which has been amazing. And then it's also a nice sized town. I mean, you can get around pretty easily here. The traffic isn't too bad. I will tell you, the first time I came here in December, it was snowing. It was, as a California kid, it was a little bit of a shock. But it's a really nice place to be. We feel very welcomed by the community, the university as well. And I feel like, you think about wanting to grow the company, expand the company. I can't think of a better place than here for all those reasons.
We like hearing that, Brett. That's
Sure.
good stuff. So if you look at the air dock from the outside, again, this massive space, if I were able to walk through it with you today, what would I see? What's happening in the air dock right now? Do you have all kinds of secret things you're building in there and things like that? Or
Black, so it looks like a secret,
yeah,
right? No, it's a great question. In fact, I'm spending time tomorrow. I come out to Akron a couple days every month. So I think some of the pictures you see what we call the baby airship, which is, it's 60 feet, so it's a big baby, but smaller certainly than the 400-foot airship. And it's helium filled. It's got a lot of the same technology that you see on Pathfinder 1. The electric motors are positioned in similar fashion. So we do all our software and flight control system testing on that baby airship. There's no better place to do that than in the hangar. It's just like perfect environment with relatively no wind. Although it's a big enough structure, you sometimes get your own weather in there, believe it or not.
Right?
Yeah. But it's so like tomorrow, now we have this 1,000-foot long, a couple 100-foot wide area that we can operate and fly this baby airship in. So we are using it a couple days every week to test out our software, our flight controls, different modes, and then once we feel comfortable, we upgrade Pathfinder 1 to validate it. But it's a perfect environment for that.
So every time you make an upgrade or a change, the team here is doing all the validation.
Yeah, so we've got that going on, and they first do it obviously on simulation, then you take it to the baby airship. So it's a great area for that. And we've done some understanding of what it will look like in the future as we do future manufacturing, but the focus is we usually use it right now for the testing. And we do a lot of R&D as well in the area and that whole campus. And our R&D arm is here with dozens and dozens of 3D printers and new technology we're exploring for the future, but that's done right here in Akron.
So you mentioned in your talk as well that you are creating stuff that hasn't been created before, or you're building new things. How do you motivate the team that you have to continue to push forward when there's probably a lot of iteration, probably some failure going on in the process, but what are you doing to sort of drive the culture in your organization and that excitement about just kind of pushing through even if you've got lots of failures and setbacks?
Sure, yeah. I think most technology companies talk about iterations and how you go through that. I think what's unique about us and airships in general is it's such a visible accomplishment. When you build it and you see it, when you fly it and you go further and farther and higher. So we have these milestones, and we've seen a lot of them this year that we've been able to accomplish that they're inspiring. Even if it's taken us, it takes years to design and build, to see it now, I think it's hard. The first time I saw Pathfinder 1, which is what's up there right now, I'd seen pictures online, I'd talked to people about it, but it absolutely takes your breath away when you step inside the hangar and you see it there, the size and the magnitude. So now to see it flying, now to see it over the Golden Gate Bridge, around Alcatraz, up in the Bay Area, I know that, we did our first, we called it our capstone event, but in October when we went to the Golden Gate Bridge, we probably had 100+ employees that were scattered along the coastline up to the Golden Gate Bridge and beyond, just to be able to see it and visibly understand what's going on. So I think, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's, we do work hard, and there's a lot of, there's things we have to learn along the way. But I think it's unique to see something that's so visible with these inspiring missions to be part of, that I find that keeps most people pretty motivated, and they're eager to do something that's ambitious, and that's the kind of people we want to hire.
And as you, again, have other leadership experiences in the military versus this leadership experience you have, what's different about leading in this environment?
Yeah, so my background obviously has always been in aviation. I think what's different is the innovation of what we're doing. Everything I've done in the past were on platforms and airplanes and ships that have been designed, built, and tested. So to me, it's what's different is you're working with people that are inspired to do something new, do something different, not afraid to push the boundaries, and then learn that maybe that's not the right way to go in terms of like small technology, but to see it all come together visibly and do something that is world changing in terms of aviation. that's a hard mission to beat. It's a hard thing to not be excited about, to be, and that you definitely want to be part of.
Well, my understanding is people are getting opportunities maybe they wouldn't have imagined they were getting. Maybe you're building new jobs and capabilities that don't exist right now to sort of drive the mission. Any examples there that you can talk
Yeah,
about?
and it's a small company relatively, so, we might hire somebody who's an engineer and they're working on one particular project, but there's a lot of cross-functional work that goes on. So I think that's exciting based on her size. But, a good example would be we've got a lady who works for us named Skylee, who's from the Akron area, went to school here. She started in ground operations, so working on the equipment that it takes to move the airship around, move the airship in and out of the hangar, but just developed a passion for aviation along the way and continued. So through our stipend program, she was able to take flight lessons, and she got her pilot's license. She now has her commercial license, and now we're training her to be one of the first LTA-produced pilots in an airship. Yeah. And so to see her come from the area, growing up around, in the area, seeing Goodyear fly all the time, to, just put her foot in the door, like, hey, I want to be part of this company who's doing great things, to now, the other day, when I was, flying around the airship, there she was in the airship flying. And she's a crew member right now as a test engineer, but soon enough, she's going to be sitting in the front seat as a pilot. So that's what a small company can do for you, especially an innovative company, and that's the kind of people we bring in that that are inspired by what they do and find ways to continue to grow.
So as you think about longer term, you're working through Pathfinder 1 right now. Plans are to sort of build the larger airship. How does Akron play into that plan?
Yeah, we kind of talked about, Akron has got the history, it's got the infrastructure, it's got this incredible amount of talent that we can leverage. So Akron's kind of always been the place that we've envisioned the next step. When we want to manufacture whatever comes after Pathfinder 1, which we would expect to be bigger and more capable. Our focus right now is clearly on flight testing, the slow, deliberate, and safe process by which we expand the envelope, flying like we've been doing recently. But we're excited about the day when it comes, and we've always said that this is where we're going to grow. This is where we're going to utilize that hangar in the area and all these relationships that we have and all the talent here to do exactly that.
So you've had a chance to interact with the employees here. You've been in the community over the last couple of years as you've come in and out. What would you say to somebody that you were maybe recruiting to Akron for a position? How would you describe Akron to them and the region? Just give me a sense of how you talk about it.
Yeah, we always start with a mission, right? Like, come to LTA because we're trying to change the world. Come to Akron because it's a community that will welcome you, that's got a technical background that will support you, and it's where we see our future. And I think, having grown up in California and all the challenges of living in a big state with infrastructure and traffic and stuff like that, for many that are trying to get their start, if they can be involved in aviation, be an engineer or in any capacity, trying to change the world, and also do that here in Akron, where it's, just a pleasant place to live and a place you feel welcome and less traffic. It's not a hard pitch, I guess, at the end of the day. I think people are eager to be part of it.
We're going to take some questions from the audience. Before we do that, maybe just a final question for you. So what are the milestones over the next 18 months? What will we be hearing from you or seeing in the news about LTA, Pathfinder? How does it play out?
Yeah, so our focus is, right, like we said right now, is focused squarely on flight testing of Pathfinder 1, our proof of concept. So I think you're going to see more of that as we continue to fly around the Bay Area and the expanded region there, as we go further and higher and faster and try to understand the limitations and what we're capable of. And that's kind of where we're focused. I think that's what you'll see. It's nice to see the success we've had, and we know more is coming, and that should be exciting to everybody here. Like we said, we have 75 employees here in Akron, and they're all part of what we're doing in flight testing there, so they're integrally involved in that. So we're excited about their continued support to our success, and I think you'll see more of us. As much, I'm a pilot by trade, so the more flying we do, the better, and I think you'll see a lot of that in the next 18 months.
Be in the air, right? So, our friends at Goodyear, oftentimes one of the premier things that you can get your hands on is a couple of tickets to sort of fly in the blimp. So where do I get the list to sort of get on?
Heather's got the list going right there.
Heather's got the list going already?
Just
all right,
see her after.
All right, we'll talk to you about that. So, Brett, thank you for the
thanks,
conversation, some of the ideas you shared. So, dear, I think you're here to do some questions, right?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Fideria Nicholson from the University of Akron. And Brett, we have several questions from the audience, so I will try to ask as many as we have time for. First question, How many years are you away from using the airship for humanitarian purposes?
It's a great question, because that's, like we talked about, that's what we see as the future for airships as our primary mission. Aviation and development is a slow, safe, and deliberate process. What you're seeing on the screen here is our proof of concept. So it's not even really a prototype. It just means we're validating all that new technology when it comes to hybrid electric motors and helium monitoring systems and carbon fiber tube structure. And we're learning from that. And by design, you want to do that safely and slowly and deliberately so you can capture all the lessons learned and then incorporate those in the future design. At some point, and I can't speak to when that happens, but we'll look to what the next design needs to be more functional, that'll be bigger, that we'll want to commercialize. And that's a slow process. I mean, it's not weeks, it's not months, it's years in some cases. But again, that's kind of why we really just focus back to the flight testing. Is the more successful we are with flight testing, the more we build the case for designing and developing. And that'll be another slow process, but that's how you want it to be. You want it to be safe as your primary function, but also capable. But so patience will be required for sure, but it'll be exciting because we'll continue to do testing on Pathfinder 1 along the way.
Thank you. And also, as a part of this question, are you seeing interest from other governments who are interested in buying for the purpose of humanitarian efforts?
I think there's a general interest around the world in more aviation support. We don't have specific conversations at this point because we don't really have that final commercial product to offer. We pay attention to the need for humanitarian aid, what that looks like, as well as travel and the cargo piece we talked about as well. So we certainly are mindful of what that demand looks like, but we haven't had any specific conversations at this point. We're really, like I said, we're kind of focused on the flight testing and make sure that is we're learning the lessons we want to learn from that before we kind of move on.
Thank you. And this next question has our students in the audience in mind. So what skills or educational background could Akron provide for its students who may want to have a future with LTA someday?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I'd love to, at some point we'll look at all the degrees of the University of Akron employees that we have now. Obviously, aerospace is helpful, but a lot of the other engineering disciplines are also equally as important. We talk about the polymer focus here in Akron, but a lot of those apply in terms of how we deal with material science as it relates to carbon fiber tubes, the soft cell engineering in creating the helium cells as well as the outer structure, electrical engineering as it relates to this new electric system where it's providing power to the batteries that power our electric motors. So it's a pretty diverse group of engineering disciplines that is what it takes. So I think all of those are applicable in some way to what we're doing, and I think would benefit us for sure.
Great, thank you. Do you have any insight into the future workforce needs for this new sector of the aviation industry, and what are the greatest needs that you foresee?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to that last question. I think certainly anything STEM focused is what we would benefit. Anything in aviation, aerospace would benefit from those with STEM backgrounds, so not limited to ones I just mentioned, but I think the more that we see that continued, University of Akron is a top-notch engineering school, so more continuation of that and more students eager to be part of aerospace and want to stay here and help us when we start growing in Akron. I think continue that path would be great.
Thank you. And what role is AI playing in the development of the airship?
They wrote my speech. No. Okay.
And the questions. No, I'm just.
And the questions. No, it didn't. It's AI is remarkable. I think we, being society at large, is trying to best understand how to best utilize AI. It can be incredibly powerful. You obviously have to know what you're doing to get the most out of it. You can't. It doesn't supplement just good thinking and engineering skills, but I think it is a good complement. A lot of what we've seen and some of the efficiency we've gained, or think of the non-engineering work when it comes to process and documentation and some of the maybe what appear to be the more mundane admin tasks. AI can do that pretty quickly. And so Luke's here, he's from the area as well, and he kind of leads our AI efforts, and I would say we started with people tiptoeing into it, and now I think people are running to find ways to better utilize it. And that's from engineering to long-term strategy stuff to writing speeches or comments and stuff like that. I think it's pretty powerful, and I think we as society are still trying to figure it out. And what I always tell people, use it. It's a tool, but you still own the results. And I think that's something that's, when you think about safety as it comes to engineering for aerospace, that we have to maintain. So I think it's, for those that don't use it, I would say get on board and start using it, because I think you want to understand what it provides.
Have there been any collaborations with Goodyear and their blimp team or other organizations in the area?
Yeah, there is certainly a lot of crossover between the two organizations, and from the pilot standpoint, there are not a lot of airship pilots in the world. The numbers are remarkably low, which is why we're excited to bring folks like Skylie on board that want to be a future airship pilot. So it's a small community. I've toured the facility at Wingfoot recently, and there's a lot of folks that have backgrounds with Goodyear that we're leveraging now when it comes to how you operate. And I think that is a long-term relationship that I look forward to continuing to grow, particularly as we get in the area and we bring in some aerospace manufacturing capabilities that might also help them. But they've been doing this for years, so anytime we have questions about things as it relates to operations, we often turn towards them or folks that have worked with them in the past, and then they've been a great resource for us.
Probably can't see him, Brett, but the Goodyear team is over there.
They are.
Supporting you, yeah.
All right.
Did I get that right?
All right, we have time for a few more. If the primary source of lift for airships is helium, and with the supply of helium on the planet being finite, what is LTA's solution to this unique problem?
No, it's a great question. Someone who's paid attention to the aerospace community at large. And obviously a lot of where helium is used nowadays is in medical and other areas like that, to include some computing cooling properties. But we recognize that it's a finite resource that's extremely valuable to what we do. So we endeavor to make sure that we treat it as such, and we spend a lot of our times in manufacturing and designing the helium cells that contain the helium to make sure that that the helium doesn't leak out at the rates that would be unacceptable. And it makes sense from a business perspective as well. Helium's expensive, and we want to make sure we maintain it. So, we have folks here today with the company that spend a lot of time thinking about how do we design the cells that make sure that the helium we put in the airship just doesn't leak out over time. And it's something I'm sure Goodyear does the same thing. We understand that that's a finite resource, and we need to treat it as such.
Thank you. How is global warming impacting the future of rigid airship flying? Do you see global warming having an impact?
Yeah, I think you could apply, you look at global warming and what it might do to maybe cause some of the disaster areas we're talking about needing support. But I also think about, airships are incredibly fuel efficient. By some estimates, 70% less fuel used, maybe 80% less fuel used than a similar sized airplane. So I think that's something that we're very considerate of as we fly around, and you sip gas. And I come from a background of flying fighters where I'm not worried about fuel burn, except when I run out of fuel. So in this case, it sips gas, and we flew again. I say this because I'm proud of it, but we flew again to the Golden Gate Bridge on Tuesday, and we stayed airborne for 7.5 hours, which was our longest flight to date. And we could have stayed out airborne for another couple hours because we sip fuel. So I think that's, in one ways, we think we can help mitigate potential climate effects in the future, but also we go back to the humanitarian kind of disaster relief. As more of those things come up, then we'll be in a position to maybe support that.
Great, thank you. What support, Brett, are you receiving, if any, from the state of Ohio for this excellent initiative?
So we certainly are pay attention to all the initiatives. Because our focus is predominantly right now California-based for the flight testing, that we haven't formalized a lot of those conversations. And I think we've started by being focused here in Akron, because I think we'll start with our family here in Akron and then expand to the larger state. But obviously at some point they'll be brought into conversation as we look to get their continued support. And we'll probably look to Akron to help us help with those conversations.
Great. All right, my final question. Can you discuss how other countries are collaborating or competing for this space or in this space?
Well, there's certainly a lot of companies trying to do similar things, particularly maybe overseas and other places. And I don't know that I look at it like necessarily competition right now. I think we certainly have our own proprietary stuff in engineering design, but for the most part, we recognize that our success or their success is helpful to the entire community and leads to a better understanding of what airships are capable of. So we root them on. We want them to be successful because rising tide floats all boats, as we say in the Navy. And I think they are benefiting right now from our incredible success we've had with Pathfinder 1 and our flight testing.
Thank you. Well, that concludes all of our questions. I actually got through all of them, so I will now turn it over to our president, Barry Dunaway. Thank you.
Brett, thank you so much for being with us at Akron Roundtable today. Thanks for investing in Akron, and Akron certainly looks forward to being part of the future, the next chapter in the rigid airship. If I could ask Michael Batu to the front of the stage to present our signature contemplative sun to our guest. This work of art was created exclusively for Akron Roundtable by Akron artist Don Drum. Thank you. Thanks, Michael. We appreciate the sponsorship of Gardens Wealth Management for that gift. Thanks to our valued partnership with IdeaStream Public Media, PBS Western Reserve, and the University of Akron ZTV, today's program will be aired on multiple channels over the next several weeks, and it will be broadcast on WKSU 89.7 FM on December 4th at 8 p.m. Additionally, today's conversation will be available to stream on demand on our website, the Akron Roundtable website, PBS Western Reserve, and IdeaStream websites, and the PBS app. We certainly appreciate our partnership with PBS because of their mission to strengthen the social, democratic, and cultural health of the United States. And thanks to the University of Akron and its Excel Center for Community Engaged Learning for sponsoring our podcast series. And thanks to the students who are here every day to make sure our AV and filming and everything takes place, and we appreciate your support. We hope to see you next month on December 11th for our signature series luncheon with Mark Elsden. He's a serial social entrepreneur and editor of Gone for Good, Negotiating the Coming Wave of Church Property Transition, which offers inspiration and practical help for churches and municipalities responding to the national wave of sales and repurposing of church property. That event will be held here at Quaker Station. You can read more about today's speaker, future Akron Roundtable events, and other individuals and organizations who support Akron Roundtable on the brochures on your table. That concludes today's program. Hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in December.
This has been a production of Akron Roundtable, PBS Western Reserve, the University of Akron, and IdeaStream Public Media.